In this video, we'll talk about how to set up your Happy HCD3-1501 for sewing on caps. In doing so, we want to adjust the driver. So this video is focusing on adjusting the driver for the very first time that you're using it. And once you make this adjustment, you won't have to do it again. This sets it up to really ideally sew for caps. So first we'll get it out, open your box, and it's together with the rest of the cap kit, including the 2 cap hoops and also the stretcher. So lifting the driver out, you're going to see that it's attached already to a couple of other items as well. First thing we want to do is we'll remove the cap hoop from the cap driver, removing the clips. So there are 2 clips here, there are 2 clamps on one side and on the other an identical clamp. So remove those 3, pop those 3 clamps loose, the cap hoop comes off. We'll go ahead and remove all the plastic and also the protective cardboard and tape. As you're doing so, you're looking for 4 thumb screws that are taped to it. They're taped right here in a small bag, so we'll remove that, set that aside. And that's going to be part of setting up the cap driver, so we'll get to that momentarily. So we've removed our protective tape and packaging. Okay, now let's start setting up the cap driver. First, we'll take the bag of 4 thumb screws that we found in the packaging, and we're going to insert these thumb screws, and we'll leave them on the cap driver. They won't have to be removed, only loosened and tightened. And we'll flip it over on its back. First is the top plate here that secures to the machine's upper pantograph arm, and there are 2 locations here where 2 of those thumb screws go. Start them out here and only insert them partially, maybe no more than about 3 or 4 full turns. And then setting it again, kind of leaning forward on its nose, you can see 2 inverted L-shaped brackets. The other 2 thumb screws insert into those locations. Each has its own hole, and we insert it from the bottom. And again, only need to do just a few turns. So the first part of cap driver setup is finished. The next stage, we'll actually put the cap driver on the machine. To do so, first remove the tubular arms from the machine if you've got them on there. So use your 3mm Allen wrench and just loosen the 2 screws at the base. There's no need to unscrew them, just loosen them maybe even a full turn and slide that off and set them aside. Before putting the cap driver onto the machine, first go into the control panel, do this with the machine on. Select the cap hoop by going to the hoop positioning screen and pressing change. Select the cap hoop category and select capped wide, which is the type of cap hoop that comes with the machine. Escape back out to the positioning screen. It'll warn you to remove the arms, as we've already done. And press P center or the F center button, which will now move the X carriage to a position where it can properly engage with the cap driver. So we'll go ahead and push that button. And once pressed, now the X carriage and the pantograph are aligned to within the range of movement for the cap driver system. And we'll now slide the cap driver onto the machine. To insert the cap driver onto the machine, you can hold on to the center assembly here and also make sure the bar doesn't slide off to the front. The bar can move a little bit left and right like this, but what we're looking for is that this is the front towards you, and underneath is a square-shaped opening, and that square-shaped opening should align with the tubular sewing arm. So we'll position it accordingly, center it over that square-shaped opening around the tubular sewing arm, and just slide it straight back. Align it so these curved guide plates are roughly here compared to the needle plate, and we'll continue aligning the brackets on the back and sides here of the cap driver. Cap driver is partially inserted over the arms. Notice that you can slide the horizontal bar left and right. Notice how the drum turns with it, so make sure that moves smoothly. And what we want to do is align this on both sides, the upper thumb screw and also the positioning screw next to it, the 2 innermost slots on each end of the pantograph plate. So we'll slide that left and right until that's aligned, and it can slide directly back into that. We don't want to do that yet, but make sure it's aligned on both this side and the other. Once you've aligned the upper thumb screw and alignment screw with the slots above it, we want to now pay attention to the inverted L-shaped plate. There are two slots in this lower plate that the shaft of the thumb screw, the vertical portion of the L-shaped guide, this actually has to pass over that. Once everything's aligned, everything should slide straight back into position like this. And when you start tightening the thumb screws, make sure the L-shaped bracket is pushed all the way in back like this against the back of the plate, and go ahead and snug that thumb screw on the first side, and then snug the same thumb screw on the other side, so that again you're making sure that this L-shaped bracket is pushed all the way back into its slot and held back there. This is very important. So we're doing this on both sides. Here's the final step of adjusting the cap driver. The adjustment that we're going to make, this last adjustment, is to the set screws on the inside of the drum of the cap driver. Okay, viewing the cap driver from the front and from slightly underneath, we're looking for these two sets of screws right here. Using a Phillips screwdriver, loosen these two sets of screws. You'll notice that there's an oval slot here. So by loosening them, we can control how the cap driver rises a little bit higher or lower. Once loosened, we'll want to adjust this so that the cap driver's drum rises as low as possible, which brings the cap sewing surface as close to the surface of the needle plate as possible. So we'll loosen these screws. With the thumb screws loose, notice that you can adjust the ride height of the cap driver as it sits on the machine, either high or low. We want this to sit as low as possible, but without the lip of this drum dragging on the surface of the rotary hook arm. So get it as low as you can, and then tighten your screws. And once you've tightened them, check your positioning, check your adjustment by slowly pushing the X carriage forward and back and checking underneath to make sure that there's no physical contact between the underside of the drum of the cap driver and the metal cover of the rotary hook arm. And you can hear that it's making some slight contact, so we'll raise it just a little bit and then try again. Repeat this process until this is low, and again, repeat this process until you have this low but not making any contact with the upper plate of the rotary hook arm.